The scent of blood and wolfsbane hit Dr. Ethan Cross before he saw her, a broken she-wolf lying in the snow, her hind legs twisted at impossible angles, silver chains burning into her flesh. He should have walked away. Every instinct screamed that this was pack business, forbidden territory for a human veterinarian who'd stumbled too close to the supernatural world. But her eyes, golden, defiant, drowning in agony, held him captive. He knelt beside her, hands already reaching for the chains, when the forest itself seemed to inhale. The temperature dropped 20 degrees. Ancient power pressed against his chest like a physical weight. And then he appeared, towering, crowned in moonlight and fury, a legend given flesh. The mythical Alpha, her father, the wolf who could shatter mountains with his howl, and Ethan had just touched his daughter. The Silvercrest territory stretched across the northern highlands like a kingdom carved from winter itself, endless forests of ancient pines, mountains that pierced the clouds, and a pack compound that resembled a fortress more than a home. Stone walls rose 30 feet high, topped with silver spikes that gleamed under the perpetual mist. Within those walls lived 300 wolves, bound by blood oaths and hierarchy, as rigid as iron. Aria Silvercrest had been born into the highest tier of that hierarchy, and it had been her prison for 23 years. She stood now in her chambers, a suite of rooms in the Alpha's manor that most wolves would kill for, vaulted ceilings, tapestries depicting legendary hunts, a four-poster bed carved from blackwood, its posts shaped like wolves mid-howl. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the training grounds where young wolves sparred, their growls carrying on the wind. Beautiful, suffocating. Aria pressed her palm against the cold glass, watching her breath fog the surface. Below, her younger brother Caden led a group of warriors through combat drills, his movements fluid and confident. He would make a fine alpha someday. Everyone said so. No one ever said that about her. "You're brooding again." The voice came from the doorway. Lyra, her lady-in-waiting and closest friend, carrying an armful of silk gowns. "Your father wants you dressed for the gathering. The Blackthorn delegation arrives at sunset." Aria's stomach clenched. The gathering, of course. "Which gown did he choose?" she asked, though she already knew. Her father, Aldrich Silvercrest, the mythical Alpha, the wolf who walked through fire, the legend who'd united 5 territories under his rule, chose everything for her. The silver one. Lyra laid it across the bed, her expression sympathetic, with the moonstone collar. A collar. How fitting. Aria turned from the window, studying the gown. It was exquisite, silk that shimmered like liquid mercury, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that mimicked wolf fur. The collar was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, moonstones set in platinum that would rest against her throat like a declaration of ownership. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "You hate it," Lyra observed. "I hate what it represents." The gathering wasn't just a political summit. It was a marketplace. And Aria was the prize commodity. For months her father had been negotiating her betrothal to Darius Blackthorn, heir to the second most powerful pack in the region. The alliance would secure Silvercrest's eastern borders, open trade routes, and cement Aldrich's legacy as the greatest alpha in living memory. All it would cost was Aria's freedom. He'd met Darius twice. He was handsome in a brutal way, sharp features, cold grey eyes, a smile that never reached past his teeth. He spoke to her father, not to her, looked at her the way one might appraise a horse. Good bloodlines, acceptable appearance, suitable for breeding. The thought made her skin crawl. "Maybe he'll be different tonight," Lyra offered, though her tone suggested she didn't believe it. "Maybe I'll sprout wings and fly away," Aria countered. A knock at the door interrupted them. "Enter," Aria called. Her father filled the doorway. 6.5 feet of raw power, silver threading through his dark hair, eyes that glowed amber even in human form. Aldrich Silvercrest didn't walk into rooms. He dominated them. The air itself seemed to bend around him, charged with the ancient magic that made him more than just an alpha. He was a force of nature, and he loved his daughter. That was the cruelest part. "You're not dressed," he observed, his voice a low rumble that resonated in her chest. "I was just about to say, the Blackthorns will be here in 2 hours. Darius is eager to see you." Aldrich stepped inside, and Lyra quickly excused herself, closing the door behind her, father and daughter alone. Aria straightened her spine, meeting his gaze. "Father, I need to speak with you about the betrothal." Something flickered in his eyes, not anger, but weariness. "Aria, I don't love him." I don't even like him. Love is a luxury, daughter. Duty is eternal. He moved to the window, looking out over his territory with the pride of a king surveying his kingdom. Do you know what I've built here? 5 packs, once at war, now united, trade flourishing, our young ones safe, no raids, no bloodshed, no children orphaned by territorial disputes. I know, Father. I've heard the stories. They're not stories. They're history, written in blood and sacrifice. He turned to her, and for a moment she saw past the legend to the man beneath, tired, aging, desperate to secure what he'd built. The Blackthorns control the eastern passes. Without this alliance, we're vulnerable. Darius may not be your choice, but he's strong, capable, and his pack respects him. He doesn't respect me. He will. Once you're his mate, once you bear his heirs. I'm not a broodmare. The words burst out before she could stop them. Silence crashed between them like a physical blow. Aldrich's expression hardened. You are the daughter of the mythical Alpha. Your bloodline is pure, your wolf strong. You have a responsibility. To sacrifice my happiness for politics? To honor your pack? His voice rose, power crackling in the air. The windows rattled. Every wolf in this territory looks to me for protection, for leadership. That burden will fall to Caden when I'm gone. But it requires allies. Strong allies. The Blackthorns are brutal. Darius's father still practices the old ways. Trial by combat, blood debts, forced submission. Is that what you want for me? I want you safe. I want our pack secure. He crossed to her, placing heavy hands on her shoulders. You're my daughter, Aria, my firstborn. If I could give you the world, I would. But I can't give you a fairy tale. I can only give you the best alliance available. She looked up at him, this legend who'd shaped her entire existence, and felt something crack inside her chest. What if I refuse? His grip tightened. You won't. But if I did, then you would shame me, weaken our pack, and potentially spark a conflict that could cost hundreds of lives. His amber eyes bored into hers. Is your personal happiness worth that price? The question hung between them like a blade. Aria wanted to scream yes, wanted to rage against the unfairness of being born female in a world that valued males as warriors and females as vessels, wanted to shift into her wolf form and run until her paws bled and the mountains swallowed her whole. But she was her father's daughter. Duty had been bred into her bones. No, she whispered. Aldrich's expression softened. He kissed her forehead, a gesture of affection that felt like a brand. Good girl. Now get dressed. Make me proud. He left, and Aria stood alone in her gilded cage, staring at the silver gown that would mark her as claimed. Outside, the sun began its descent toward the horizon. In 2 hours, Darius Blackthorn would arrive. In 2 hours, her fate would be sealed, unless something changed, unless the gods showed mercy, unless... A howl rose from the southern border, urgent and alarmed, then another, and another. Aria's wolf stirred beneath her skin, sensing danger. Something was coming, something that would shatter everything. The great hall of Silvercrest had been transformed into a cathedral of power and prestige. Hundreds of candles cast dancing shadows across stone walls, adorned with banners representing the 5 united packs. Long tables groaned under the weight of roasted game, fresh bread and barrels of honey mead. The air thrummed with anticipation, wolves in their finest attire, warriors standing at attention, the scent of dominance and submission weaving through the crowd like invisible threads. Aria stood on the raised dais beside her father's throne, the silver gown clinging to her like a second skin, the moonstone collar cold against her throat. She felt like a statue, a beautiful, hollow thing meant to be admired, but never heard. The Blackthorn delegation had arrived an hour ago. 30 wolves, all battle-hardened, moving with the predatory grace of those accustomed to violence. They'd entered the hall like conquerors, and Aldrich had welcomed them with the calculated warmth of a king securing his borders. And then there was Darius. He sat now at the high table directly across from Aria, his grey eyes assessing her with the cold precision of a jeweler examining a stone for flaws. He was handsome. She couldn't deny that. Sharp jawline, broad shoulders, dark hair pulled back to reveal a face that might have been carved from granite. But there was something missing behind those eyes. Something vital. Warmth, kindness, soul. You look exquisite, Lady Aria, he said, his voice smooth as silk over steel. The silver suits you. Submissive, elegant, submissive. The word landed like a slap. Thank you, Lord Darius, she replied, keeping her tone neutral. Beside her, she felt her father's approving presence. "I trust you've been informed of the arrangement," Darius continued, taking a long drink of mead. "The binding ceremony will take place at the next full moon. 3 weeks. That should give you time to prepare yourself." Prepare herself, as if she were a sacrifice being readied for the altar. "I'm aware," Aria said carefully. "Good." Darius leaned back, his gaze sliding over her body in a way that made her wolf snarl beneath her skin. "I have certain expectations for my mate. Obedience, loyalty, discretion. My father runs our pack with traditional values, and I intend to do the same. You'll find that I'm firm in my leadership." Aria's fingers curled into fists beneath the table. "And what of partnership? Mutual respect?" Darius laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "Respect is earned through submission, Lady Aria. You're young. You'll learn." Across the table, she saw Lyra's expression darken. Even Caden, seated further down, looked uncomfortable. But her father remained impassive, the mythical alpha watching the exchange with the detached interest of someone observing a business transaction. Because that's what this was. Business. "I look forward to teaching you," Darius added, his smile predatory. "Breaking in a spirited mare is always more satisfying than one already broken." The hall seemed to hold its breath. Aria felt something snap inside her, a thread that had been pulled taut for 23 years finally severing. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against stone. "Excuse me," she said, her voice tight. "I need air." "Sit down." Her father's command cracked through the hall like a whip. "Father, sit down." The weight of his alpha command pressed against her wolf, forcing submission. Her legs trembled with the effort of resisting, but she slowly lowered herself back into the chair. Humiliation burned through her veins like poison. Darius watched with amusement. "Spirit is acceptable in private, Lady Aria, but in public you will show proper deference, both to your alpha and to your future mate." "Perhaps," a new voice interjected, smooth and feminine, "the lady simply needs a moment to adjust to such overwhelming masculine energy." Aria's gaze snapped to the speaker, a she-wolf seated beside Darius, beautiful in a calculated way, with auburn hair and emerald eyes that glittered with malice. Selene Blackthorn, Darius's cousin, and rumor had it his former lover. "Lady Selene," Aldrich acknowledged with a nod. "Alpha Silvercrest." Selene's smile was all teeth. "Forgive me for speaking out of turn, but I feel compelled to offer some sisterly advice to dear Aria. The transition from pampered daughter to dutiful mate can be jarring, especially when one has been sheltered from the harsher realities of pack life." "I'm not sheltered," Aria said quietly. "Of course not," Selene purred. "Though I wonder, have you ever had to fight for your position? Prove your worth through anything other than your bloodline? Darius values strength above all else. I do hope you're prepared to demonstrate yours." The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Aria's wolf surged forward, demanding she meet it. "What exactly are you suggesting, Lady Selene?" "A simple demonstration. A shift. A run through the forest. Nothing too strenuous." Selene's eyes gleamed. "Unless, of course, you're afraid." "Aria doesn't need to prove anything," Caden interjected, his voice hard. "I'll do it," Aria said, standing again. This time her father didn't stop her. The crowd murmured with excitement as they moved outside, torches lighting the path to the training grounds. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and snow. Wolves gathered in a circle, their eyes reflecting torchlight like dozens of small moons. Aria stripped off the silver gown, standing in her shift, her skin prickling with cold and adrenaline. Across from her, Selene did the same, her body lean and scarred, a warrior's body. "First one to the sacred oak and back," Selene announced. "Simple enough, yes?" Aria nodded, calling her wolf forward. The shift rippled through her, bones restructuring, fur sprouting, senses sharpening. Her wolf was smaller than Selene's, silver-white with her father's amber eyes, built for speed rather than combat. The signal came, a howl from Darius. They ran. Aria's paws ate up the ground, her wolf reveling in the freedom of movement. The forest blurred around her, familiar paths unfolding beneath her feet. She could hear Selene behind her, gaining ground, but the sacred oak was close. Pain exploded through her hind leg. Selene's jaws clamped down, teeth sinking deep, and Aria yelped as she tumbled forward. She tried to rise, but her leg wouldn't support her weight. Selene circled, her wolf's eyes gleaming with triumph. This wasn't a race. It was a hunt. Aria tried to shift back to human form, to call for help, but Selene struck again. claws raking across her spine, driving her down. The scent of her own blood filled her nostrils. Her wolf whimpered, confused and terrified. Why wasn't anyone stopping this? Through the pain she heard voices, shouting, arguing, her father's roar of fury. But it was too late. Seleni's final strike came with surgical precision, teeth closing around Aria's spine, just above her hips. The crack echoed through the forest like a gunshot, and then there was nothing below her waist, no sensation, no movement, just absence. Selene shifted back to human form, standing over Aria's broken wolf body. "How unfortunate," she said, her voice carrying to the gathered crowd. "It seems Lady Aria isn't quite as strong as her bloodline suggested. Perhaps this betrothal requires reconsideration." Aria tried to move, to shift, to do anything, but her hind legs lay useless, twisted at wrong angles, paralyzed. Darius approached, his expression cold. "A paralyzed mate is of no use to me. She can't bear strong pups, can't defend territory, can't even run." He turned to Aldrich, who stood frozen in horror. "I'm afraid, Alpha Silvercrest, that this arrangement is no longer acceptable. I cannot bind myself to damaged goods." The words cut deeper than Selene's teeth. Damaged goods. Aria's wolf whimpered, and she felt something inside her shatter, not her spine, but something more fundamental, her worth, her future, her place in the world. The crowd whispered, their voices a chorus of pity and disgust. And her father, the mythical Alpha, the legend, the wolf who could shatter mountains, stood silent, his face carved from stone, unable to meet her eyes. She was broken. She was useless. She was nothing. The healer's wings smelled of herbs and failure. Aria lay on a bed of furs, her human form restored but her legs still lifeless weights beneath the blankets. 3 days had passed since the accident. That's what they were calling it now, though everyone knew the truth. Selene had crippled her deliberately and no one had stopped it. Not the warriors who'd watched. Not her brother, who'd been held back by protocol. Not her father, who'd arrived seconds too late. The pack's healers had tried everything. Bone-setting spells, ancient poultices, even a blood ritual that left her screaming for hours. Nothing worked. The damage was too severe, too precise. Selene had known exactly where to bite. "You need to eat something," Lyra urged, holding a bowl of broth. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. "I'm not hungry. Aria, please, leave it." Aria turned her face to the wall, unable to bear the pity in her friend's gaze. Lyra set the bowl down with a soft clink and retreated, her footsteps fading into silence. Alone Aria let the tears come, silent, bitter things that soaked into the furs beneath her cheek. She'd cried more in 3 days than in her entire life, cried for her broken body, for her shattered future, for the look on her father's face when Darius had rejected her in front of the entire pack. Damaged goods. The Blackthorns had left the next morning, taking their alliance and their contempt with them. Selene had offered a hollow apology, claiming the sparring had gotten out of hand. No one believed her. No one challenged her either, because Aria wasn't worth a war. The door opened again and she tensed, expecting Lyra. But the footsteps were heavier, measured. Her father's scent, pine and smoke and ancient power, filled the room. "Aria." His voice was rough, as if he'd been shouting, or perhaps not speaking at all. She didn't turn around. "Come to see the damaged goods." "Don't." The word cracked like thunder. "Don't speak of yourself that way." "Why not? It's what everyone else is thinking." She finally looked at him, this legend who'd always seemed invincible. He looked older now, the silver in his hair more pronounced. His shoulders bowed beneath invisible weight. "You couldn't even look at me. When Darius rejected me, you just stood there." Aldrich's jaw clenched. "I was processing. A bitter laugh escaped her. "I was humiliated in front of 5 packs, father. Crippled, cast aside like a broken tool, and you were processing. What would you have had me do?" His voice rose, power crackling in the air. "Challenge Darius? Start a war over a training accident? I'm an alpha, Aria. Every decision I make affects hundreds of lives, and I'm your daughter. Doesn't that count for anything?" The silence stretched between them like a chasm. "Of course it does," he said finally, but the words sounded hollow. "I've sent for specialists, a witch from the Shadowfen Coven, a shaman from the Northern Territories. Someone will find a way to heal you, and if they can't..." He had no answer. Aria turned back to the wall. "You should go. I'm sure you have important alpha business to attend to." She heard him hesitate, felt the weight of words unspoken. Then his footsteps retreated, and the door closed with a soft click that sounded like finality. 2 more days passed in a haze of pain and visitors bearing false hope. The witch declared her spine magically inert. Whatever damage had been done was purely physical, beyond her power to mend. The shaman performed a ritual that left Aria convulsing but still paralyzed. One by one, the specialists admitted defeat. Aria stopped hoping. She spent her days staring at the ceiling, counting the wooden beams, wondering if this was all her life would ever be. A cautionary tale, a reminder of what happened when she-wolves stepped out of line. It was Lyra who finally broke through her despair. "There's someone here to see you," she announced one evening, her tone carefully neutral. "Tell them I'm not receiving visitors. He's not from the pack. He's human." That got Aria's attention. Humans rarely ventured into pack territory, and never without explicit permission. "What does he want?" "To help, apparently. He heard about your injury and—" "How would a human hear about pack business?" Lyra bit her lip. "Your brother told him. Hayden's been searching for alternatives." Something flickered in Aria's chest. Not hope, she'd learned better than that, but curiosity. "Fine. Send him in." The man who entered was not what she expected. He was young, perhaps 30, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes the color of storm clouds. Tall but not imposing, dressed in practical clothes that smelled of antiseptic and animal fur. He carried a worn leather bag and moved with the careful confidence of someone accustomed to dealing with dangerous creatures. "Lady Aria," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "my name is Dr. Ethan Cross. I'm a veterinarian specializing in large predators. Your brother asked me to examine you." A veterinarian, of course, because she was just another animal now. "I don't need a vet," she said coldly. "I need a miracle." "Maybe." He set his bag down, pulling out a strange device, metal and glass with wires attached. "But first I need to understand the extent of the damage. May I?" Something in his tone, respectful, not pitying, made her nod. He worked in silence, his hands professional and impersonal as he examined her legs, tested reflexes that didn't respond, ran the device along her spine. His expression remained neutral, but she saw his jaw tighten when he reached the injury site. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing," he said finally. "The bite severed your spinal cord at the L1 vertebra. Clean break, almost surgical. Can you fix it?" He met her gaze and she saw something unexpected there. Not pity, but anger. "Not here, not with the resources available in pack territory, but—" He hesitated. "There's a facility, 3 hours south near the human-wolf border. We've been developing experimental treatments for spinal injuries in wolves. Stem cell therapy, nerve regeneration, bioelectric stimulation. It's cutting edge and there are no guarantees, but it's a chance." "It's a chance," he confirmed. Aria's heart hammered against her ribs. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Ethan's expression softened. "Because I've spent my life working with predators, Lady Aria, and I've learned that the most dangerous thing you can do to a wild creature is cage it. You're caged right now, by injury, by expectations, by a system that values you only for what you can provide to others." He stood, shouldering his bag. "I'm offering you a key. What you do with it is up to you." He turned to leave, but Aria's voice stopped him. "Wait." She pushed herself up on her elbows, ignoring the way her useless legs shifted beneath the blankets. "If I agree to this treatment, how long would I be gone?" "Months, potentially. The therapy is intensive. Months away from Silvercrest, from her father's disappointed gaze, from the whispers and the pity from the cage. I'll need to speak with my father. Your brother already secured his permission, conditional on my evaluation." Ethan's storm-gray eyes held hers. "The Alpha wants you healed. What he doesn't realize is that healing isn't just physical." Something in Aria's chest cracked open, not breaking, but blooming. "When do we leave?" she asked. "Tomorrow at dawn, pack light. Where we're going, titles don't matter. Only determination." After he left, Aria lay back against the furs, her mind racing. For the first time in days, she felt something other than despair. She felt possibility. Outside her window, the moon rose full and bright, painting the world in silver light, and somewhere in the forest, a wolf howled, not in mourning, but in defiance. Aria closed her eyes and howled back, silent, but fierce. "I am not broken. I am transforming." The Crossroads facility existed in the liminal space between human civilization and supernatural territory, a converted estate surrounded by dense forest. where science and ancient magic learned to coexist. For 3 months it had been Aria's entire world, and she had been reborn within its walls. The transformation hadn't been easy. The stem cell injections felt like liquid fire in her spine. The bioelectric stimulation made her muscles seize and spasm for hours. The physical therapy pushed her past every limit she thought she had, then demanded more. But Ethan had been there through all of it. Not as a healer performing miracles, but as a partner in her resurrection. He never pitied her, never coddled her. When she screamed in frustration after her legs refused to move for the 100th time, he simply said, "Again." When she wept from exhaustion, he handed her water and waited. When she finally took her first trembling step, he smiled, not with surprise but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd never doubted. "You're remarkable," he'd said that day, and she'd believed him. Now, standing in her room at the facility, Aria studied her reflection in the full-length mirror. 3 months had sculpted her body into something new. Her legs, once atrophied and useless, were lean with hard-earned muscle. Her posture radiated confidence instead of defeat, but the biggest change was in her eyes. They burned with purpose. She was no longer the pampered daughter waiting to be claimed. She was a warrior who'd clawed her way back from the abyss. "Ready?" Ethan appeared in the doorway, dressed in formal attire that made him look less like a veterinarian and more like a dignitary. Tonight was the Autumn Convergence, a gathering of pack leaders, human liaisons, and supernatural diplomats. A celebration of the fragile peace between worlds, and Aria's first public appearance since her injury. "As ready as I'll ever be," she said, smoothing down the emerald gown she'd chosen. Not silver this time, not submissive. This dress was bold, cut to emphasize the strength in her shoulders, the power in her stance. "Your father will be there," Ethan said carefully. They'd talked about this, about her complicated feelings toward Aldrich, about the weight of expectations she'd carried her entire life. "I know." Aria met his gaze in the mirror. "Thank you, Ethan, for everything." Something flickered in his storm-grey eyes, something warm and complicated that made her pulse quicken. Over the past 3 months, their relationship had evolved beyond doctor and patient. He challenged her intellectually, debated philosophy and pack politics with her, treated her like an equal. And sometimes, when their hands brushed during therapy sessions, she felt a spark that had nothing to do with bioelectric stimulation. "You did the work," he said softly. "I just provided the tools." Still, she turned to face him properly. "I wouldn't be standing here without you." The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Ethan cleared his throat, stepping back. "We should go. The car's waiting." The convergence was held at Thornhaven Estate, a neutral territory maintained by the Council of Interspecies Relations. The grand ballroom glittered with chandeliers and political tension, wolves in formal attire mingling with human diplomats, witches comparing notes with scientists, vampires observing from the shadows with their characteristic detachment. Aria entered on Ethan's arm, and the room seemed to inhale. Conversations faltered, heads turned. She felt the weight of hundreds of eyes assessing her, measuring her against the broken she-wolf they'd last seen 3 months ago. Let them look. She held her head high, her hand resting lightly on Ethan's arm, and walked into the ballroom like she owned it. "Aria?" Her brother's voice cut through the murmurs. Hayden pushed through the crowd, his expression caught between shock and joy. "By the moon, you're walking." "I'm running, actually," she said with a slight smile. "Among other things." He pulled her into a fierce embrace, and she felt his shoulders shake. We all thought." "I know." She pulled back, studying his face. "Where's father?" Hayden's expression darkened. "Speaking with the Blackthorns. They're here." Of course they were. Aria's wolf stirred beneath her skin, no longer cowering but eager. "Good. Aria, maybe you should..." "Should what? Hide? Slink away like a wounded animal?" She squeezed his hand. "Those days are over, brother." She moved deeper into the ballroom, Ethan a steady presence beside her. Wolves parted before her, their expressions ranging from amazement to unease. She'd been written off, dismissed as damaged goods. Her recovery was an inconvenient resurrection. And then she saw them. Darius stood near the far wall, his grey eyes widening as he registered her presence. Beside him, Celine's face went pale, her champagne glass frozen halfway to her lips. Aria walked straight toward them, her stride confident and predatory. "Lord Darius, Lady Celine," her voice carried across the sudden silence. "How lovely to see you again." Darius recovered first. his expression smoothing into calculated neutrality. "Lady Aria, we heard rumors of your recovery. Impressive, miraculous, some might say," Celine added, her emerald eyes sharp with suspicion. "Though I wonder about the methods. There are whispers of human experimentation, of unnatural healing." "There's nothing unnatural about refusing to accept defeat," Aria interrupted. "Though I suppose that's a foreign concept to those who rely on treachery rather than strength." Celine's face flushed. "How dare you? How dare I?" Aria's voice dropped to a dangerous purr. "You crippled me in front of my entire pack, ended a betrothal through calculated violence, and you have the audacity to question my methods of healing." The crowd pressed closer, sensing confrontation. Aria felt Ethan's hand at the small of her back, not restraining, but supporting. Darius stepped forward, his alpha presence rolling out like a wave. "Careful, Lady Aria. You may have regained your legs, but you're still just a daughter of Silvercrest. You have no authority here." "Authority?" Aria laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "I don't need authority, Lord Darius. I have something far more valuable, the truth. Everyone here knows what happened that night. They know Celine attacked me deliberately. They know you rejected me like I was livestock that failed inspection, and they know neither of you faced consequences." "It was a training accident," Celine began. "It was attempted murder." The new voice came from behind Aria, deep, resonant, crackling with barely contained power. Her father. Aldrich Silvercrest moved through the crowd like a force of nature, his amber eyes blazing. He stopped beside Aria, and for the first time in her life, she felt him stand with her rather than over her. "The Blackthorn Alliance is dissolved," Aldrich announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "Effective immediately. Any pack that conducts itself with such dishonor has no place in our coalition." Darius's face darkened. "You're making a mistake, Aldrich. Our territories, we'll manage without you." Aldrich's gaze swept over Darius and Celine with contempt. "My daughter nearly died because I prioritized politics over protection. That ends now." Aria felt something crack in her chest, not breaking but opening. Her father met her eyes and she saw regret there, shame, and something that looked like pride. "Furthermore," Aldrich continued, "I'm establishing a new position within Silvercrest, Ambassador of External Relations, someone to represent our pack's interests with intelligence, strength, and integrity." He turned to Aria fully. "If you'll accept it, daughter." The ballroom erupted in whispers. Aria stared at her father, this legend who'd caged her for 23 years, now offering her wings. A real position, with actual authority, real responsibility, real choice. Aldrich's expression softened. "I can't undo the past, Aria, but I can offer you a different future." She looked at Ethan, who smiled encouragingly, at Caden, whose face shone with pride, at the assembled crowd, waiting to see if the broken she-wolf would accept her resurrection. "I accept," she said clearly. "On one condition." Aldrich raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "I choose my own advisors, my own methods, my own path." She straightened her shoulders. "No more cages, father, not even gilded ones." For a long moment, the mythical alpha studied his daughter. Then slowly he smiled, genuine and warm. "Agreed." He extended his hand, and she took it, not as a subordinate, but as an equal. The ballroom exploded in applause. Across the room, Darius's face twisted with fury. Selikin looked like she'd swallowed poison, but Aria didn't care. She'd reclaimed her narrative, rewritten her story, and as Ethan's hand found hers, squeezing gently, she realized something profound. She hadn't just healed her body, she'd freed her soul. The weeks following the convergence transformed Silvercrest in ways no one had anticipated. Aria's new role as Ambassador of External Relations wasn't ceremonial. She made certain of that. She restructured trade agreements with neighboring packs, established diplomatic channels with human settlements, and created a council that included voices previously ignored, healers, scholars, and yes, even unmated she-wolves who'd been relegated to domestic roles. The old guard grumbled, the traditionalists protested, but Aldrich stood firm, and slowly, grudgingly, the pack adapted. Change, Aria learned, was a war fought in inches. She stood now in her new office, a converted tower room with windows overlooking both the pack compound and the wild forest beyond. Maps covered one wall, correspondence another. Her desk was buried under proposals, petitions and reports. It was chaotic and overwhelming and absolutely perfect. "You're working too hard again," Ethan observed from the doorway, carrying 2 cups of tea. Aria looked up, a smile tugging at her lips. He'd been visiting more frequently, ostensibly to monitor her continued recovery, but they both knew the real reason. "Says the man who works 18-hour days," she countered, accepting the tea gratefully. "I'm a workaholic. You're supposed to be the voice of reason." He settled into the chair across from her, his storm-grey eyes warm with affection. Over the past month, their relationship had shifted from professional to something deeper. He made her laugh, challenged her assumptions, saw her not as a wolf or a diplomat or a daughter, but simply as Aria. And when he looked at her the way he was looking at her now, like she was the most fascinating creature in any world, he felt truly seen for the first time in her life. "I received an interesting letter today," she said, pulling a sealed envelope from the stack. "From the Blackthorns." Ethan's expression darkened. "What do they want?" "Reconciliation, apparently. Darius claims the incident with Celine was a misunderstanding. He's requesting a meeting to discuss renewed cooperation." Aria's voice dripped with skepticism. "You're not seriously considering it?" "Of course not, but it's interesting timing." She tapped the envelope thoughtfully. 3 packs have approached us about alliances since the convergence. The Blackthorns are losing influence, and Darius knows it." "Good." Ethan's voice was hard. "After what they did to you." "They didn't break me." Aria met his gaze steadily. "They tried. But I'm still here, stronger than before. That's the best revenge." He reached across the desk, his hand covering hers. "You're remarkable, you know that?" Heat bloomed in her chest. "You've mentioned it once or twice." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then a knock at the door shattered it. "Enter," Aria called, reluctantly pulling her hand back. Her father stepped inside, his expression grave. "We need to talk, privately." Ethan stood immediately. "I'll give you space." "No." Aldrich's voice stopped him. "This concerns you as well, Dr. Cross." Aria's wolf stirred uneasily. "What's wrong?" Aldrich closed the door, his movements deliberate. "I've received reports from our border patrols. The Blackthorns have been making inquiries about you, Aria, about your recovery, about Dr. Cross and his facility." "What kind of inquiries?" Ethan asked sharply. "The dangerous kind. They're calling your methods unnatural, claiming you've been corrupted by human science, that your wolf is compromised." Aldrich's amber eyes burned with barely contained fury. "Darius is building a case to challenge your legitimacy as ambassador. He's gathering support from traditionalist packs." Aria's hands clenched into fists. "Let him try. I've done nothing wrong. Haven't you?" The question came from the doorway, a new voice, cold and familiar. Celine stepped into the office, flanked by 2 Blackthorn warriors. She wore traveling leathers and a smile sharp as knives. "How did you get past security?" Aria demanded, rising to her feet. "Your father granted me an audience. I have information he needs to hear." Celine's emerald eyes glittered with malice. "About the true nature of your miracle recovery." Aldrich's expression remained neutral, but Aria saw the tension in his shoulders. "Speak." Celine pulled a folder from her pack, laying photographs across Aria's desk. Medical equipment, laboratory settings, and images of Aria during her treatment, vulnerable, unconscious, hooked to machines. "Your daughter didn't heal through natural means, Alpha Silvercrest. She was experimented on. Human technology merged with wolf physiology. She's not pure anymore. She's a hybrid, an abomination." The word hung in the air like poison. Aria felt her wolf recoil, not from shame, but from rage. "Those treatments saved my life. They corrupted your nature." Celine's voice rose. "You're not fully wolf anymore, Aria. You can't be trusted in a position of power. You're compromised, tainted." "That's enough." Ethan's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stood, his human frame somehow commanding despite being surrounded by predators. Lady Aria underwent cutting-edge medical treatment that repaired catastrophic spinal damage. There was no genetic modification, no corruption, just science doing what magic couldn't, giving her a second chance. "And what would a human know about wolf nature?" Celine sneered. "More than you, apparently." Ethan's storm-grey eyes were cold as winter. "I've spent 15 years studying wolf physiology. I know the difference between healing and corruption. Aria is exactly what she's always been, a wolf with an unbreakable spirit. The only thing that changed is that she's no longer willing to accept the limitations others tried to impose on her." Celine turned to Aldrich. "You see? He's manipulated her, turned her against her own kind. This is exactly what the traditionalists feared, human influence corrupting pack hierarchy. Aldrich studied the photographs in silence, his expression unreadable. Aria felt her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it. The moment her father would choose between progress and tradition, between his daughter and his legacy. "These images," Aldrich said finally, his voice measured, "show my daughter fighting for her life, fighting to reclaim what was stolen from her through treachery." He looked up, his amber eyes blazing. "I see no corruption here, Lady Selene. I see courage." Selene's face flushed. "The Council of Alphas won't agree. Then they can challenge me directly." Aldrich's power filled the room, pressing against them like a physical force. "My daughter is Ambassador of External Relations. That position stands, and if Darius or anyone else questions her legitimacy, they'll answer to me." "You're making a mistake," Selene hissed. "The old ways exist for a reason." "The old ways?" Aria interrupted, her voice steady despite the fury coursing through her veins. "Allowed you to cripple me without consequence. The old ways valued me only as breeding stock. The old ways are exactly what need to change." She stepped around her desk, facing Selene directly. "I'm not corrupted. I'm evolved. And if that terrifies you, good. It should." Selene's hand moved toward the knife at her belt, but Aldrich's growl stopped her cold. "You came here under flag of truce," he said softly, dangerously. "Leave the same way, and tell Darius that if he wants to challenge Silvercrest's authority, he should do it openly, not through cowardly insinuations and political maneuvering." For a moment, Selene looked like she might argue. Then she gathered her photographs, her movements sharp with barely contained rage. "This isn't over." "No," Aria agreed. "It's not. But next time you come for me, I'll be ready." Selene and her warriors left, their footsteps echoing down the tower stairs. Silence filled the office like smoke. Aldrich turned to Aria, his expression softening. "I meant what I said. Your position stands. But Selene's right about one thing. This will cause conflict. The traditionalists will use this against us. Let them." Aria's voice was firm. "I'm tired of hiding who I am to make others comfortable. If they want to challenge me, they can do it to my face." Pride flickered in her father's eyes. "You've become formidable, daughter. I learned from the best." She paused. "Thank you for standing with me. Always." Aldrich moved toward the door, then stopped. "Dr. Cross, a word." Ethan straightened, clearly expecting a warning or threat, but Aldrich simply extended his hand. "Thank you," the mythical alpha said quietly, "for giving me back my daughter. Not the one I tried to shape, but the one she was always meant to be." Ethan shook his hand, surprise and respect crossing his features. "She did that herself, Alpha. I just provided the tools." After Aldrich left, Aria sagged against her desk, adrenaline draining away. Ethan was beside her immediately, his hands steadying her. "Are you all right?" "I'm perfect." She looked up at him, this human who'd seen her at her lowest and never flinched. "Ethan, The words caught in her throat, too big and too terrifying to speak, but he seemed to understand. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing across her skin with infinite gentleness. "I know," he said softly. "Me too." And when he kissed her, it felt like coming home. 6 months later, the spring equinox arrived with the scent of new beginnings. Aria stood on the balcony of the newly constructed diplomatic hall, a building she'd designed herself, where pack members and human allies could meet on equal ground. Below, the compound bustled with activity that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Wolf pups played alongside human children from the border settlements. Healers consulted with doctors. Warriors trained with human security specialists, learning tactics that didn't rely solely on brute strength. Silvercrest was transforming, and Aria had been the catalyst. "Admiring your handiwork?" Ethan's voice came from behind her, warm and familiar, his arms wrapped around her waist, and she leaned back against his chest, savoring the solid comfort of his presence. "Our handiwork," she corrected. "None of this would have happened without you. I just provided medical expertise. You're the one who convinced an entire pack to embrace change." "Not the entire pack." Aria's smile turned wry. "Elder Thorn still refers to me as that hybrid abomination when he thinks I can't hear. Elder Thorn is a fossil who'll be dust before he accepts that the world has moved on." Ethan pressed a kiss to her temple. "Besides, the younger generation adores you. I saw 3 she-wolves yesterday arguing over who gets to apprentice under you." Pride bloomed in Aria's chest. She'd established a mentorship program for young she-wolves, teaching them diplomacy, negotiation, and the art of claiming space in rooms that didn't want them. The applications had been overwhelming. Speaking of the younger generation, Ethan continued, his tone shifting to something more serious, I received an interesting letter from the Crossroads facility. They want to expand the spinal injury program, create a permanent treatment center on the border between human and pack territories. Aria turned in his arms, studying his face. That's wonderful. You've been wanting to scale up the research. They want you involved, as a liaison and spokesperson. His storm-grey eyes searched hers. It would mean traveling frequently, splitting time between here and there. And you're worried I'll say no because of my responsibilities here? I'm worried you'll say yes and burn yourself out trying to do everything. His hand cupped her cheek. You've accomplished so much, Aria. You don't have to save everyone. I'm not trying to save everyone. She covered his hand with hers. Just the ones who feel as trapped as I once did. And yes, I'll do it. We'll figure out the logistics. Relief and concern warred in his expression. We? Did you think I'd let you run a revolutionary medical program without proper diplomatic support? She smiled. Besides, someone needs to make sure you eat actual meals instead of surviving on coffee and determination. He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. What did I do to deserve you? You saw me when I was broken and treated me like I was whole. She rose on her toes, kissing him softly. That's everything. A knock at the door interrupted them. Enter, Aria called. Caden stepped inside, his expression caught between amusement and exasperation. Sorry to interrupt, but Father wants you in the Great Hall. The delegation from Ironwood Pack has arrived early. Aria groaned. Of course they have. Give me 5 minutes. After Caden left, she turned back to Ethan. Duty calls. Will you be at the feast tonight? Wouldn't miss it. Someone needs to make sure you actually eat instead of just networking. He kissed her forehead. Go be brilliant. The Great Hall had been transformed for the spring equinox celebration. Banners representing 7 allied packs hung from the rafters. Tables groaned under the weight of food from both wolf and human cuisines, and the air thrummed with music and laughter. Aria moved through the crowd with practiced ease, greeting allies, smoothing over minor disputes, and subtly steering conversations toward productive outcomes. She wore a gown of deep forest green, embroidered with silver wolves that seemed to run across the fabric. Her hair was unbound, flowing down her back in waves. She looked every inch the diplomat, the leader, the wolf who'd clawed her way back from death. Lady Aria. The voice was familiar and unwelcome. She turned to find Darius Blackthorne standing behind her, his grey eyes unreadable. He looked older, harder, the arrogance she remembered tempered by something that might have been regret. Lord Darius? Her voice was cool but professional. I wasn't aware the Blackthornes had been invited. We weren't. I came independently. He glanced around the hall, noting the curious stares. Could we speak privately? Every instinct screamed no, but curiosity won. 5 minutes. The garden. They stepped outside into the cool spring air, away from the noise and scrutiny. Darius stood with his hands clasped behind his back, the posture of a warrior uncomfortable with vulnerability. I owe you an apology, he said finally. Aria blinked, genuinely surprised. Excuse me? For what happened? For how I treated you? He struggled with the words. For being exactly the kind of alpha I swore I'd never become. You rejected me in front of 5 packs because I was paralyzed, Aria said flatly. You called me damaged goods. I did, and I was wrong. Darius met her gaze, and she saw genuine shame there. I was raised to value strength above all else, to see weakness as something to be eliminated. But watching you these past months, seeing what you've built, how you've transformed not just yourself but your entire pack, I realized I was the weak one. I let tradition and fear dictate my choices instead of honor. Aria studied him, searching for deception, but she saw only a man confronting his own failures. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it, and because... He hesitated. Selene is planning something. I don't know what, but she's been meeting with traditionalist alphas, building alliances. She's obsessed with proving you're corrupted, that your methods are dangerous. I know. We've been monitoring her movements. Then you should also know she's not working alone. There are wolves within Silvercrest who share her views, who see your father's support of you as weakness. Darius's expression darkened. Be careful, Lady Aria. The old guard doesn't surrender power easily. Is this genuine concern, or are you trying to manipulate me? It's genuine, for what it's worth. He stepped back, preparing to leave. You were right. That night at the Convergence, I didn't see your value because I was too busy measuring you against outdated standards. You're going to change the world, Lady Aria. I just hope I'm wise enough to adapt to it. He left before she could respond, disappearing into the shadows. Aria stood alone in the garden, processing the conversation. An apology from Darius Blackthorne, warnings about Celine, the admission that change was coming whether the old guard accepted it or not. Everything all right? Ethan appeared beside her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. She accepted one gratefully. Darius just apologized and warned me about a conspiracy. Should I be worried? Probably. She sipped the wine, letting its warmth spread through her. But I'm not afraid anymore. Whatever comes, we'll face it. We, Ethan repeated, his smile soft. I like the sound of that. They stood together in the garden, watching the moon rise over Silvercrest territory. Inside, the feast continued, wolves and humans celebrating together, old boundaries dissolving, new possibilities emerging. Do you ever regret it? Ethan asked quietly. Choosing this path, it would have been easier to accept the limitations, to live quietly. Never. Aria's voice was firm. I was dying in that gilded cage, Ethan, slowly suffocating under the weight of expectations. You gave me the chance to breathe, to become who I was always meant to be. And who is that? She turned to face him fully, her amber eyes blazing with conviction. Someone who refuses to accept that the world can't change. Someone who fights for those who can't fight for themselves. Someone who loves a brilliant, stubborn human who sees past species and status to the person beneath. Ethan's expression softened. I love you too, you know. Even when you're being impossibly idealistic and working yourself to exhaustion. Especially then, she corrected, kissing him. When they finally returned to the feast, hand in hand, the hall erupted in cheers. Aldrich raised his glass in salute, pride shining in his amber eyes. Caden whooped loudly, earning a laugh from the assembled crowd. Even the traditionalists, while disapproving, couldn't deny the joy that filled the room. Aria looked around at the life she'd built from the ashes of her humiliation, the alliances forged, the minds changed, the future shaped by determination rather than destiny. She'd been broken, paralyzed, cast aside as worthless, and she'd risen stronger than anyone imagined possible. As the music swelled and Ethan pulled her into a dance, Aria realized something profound. She'd spent 23 years trying to fit into a cage designed by others. But true freedom wasn't about escaping the cage. It was about refusing to believe the cage existed in the first place. She was Aria Silvercrest, diplomat, warrior, survivor, lover, and she was just beginning to bloom. Thank you for joining Aria on her journey from broken she-wolf to powerful diplomat. If you enjoyed this story of transformation, resilience, and love that transcends boundaries, please subscribe for more tales of supernatural romance and female empowerment. Leave a comment below telling us where you're listening from. We love hearing from our global audience. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that being broken is just the beginning of becoming unbreakable.